Hi folks, welcome back to No Waffle Travel, the channel dedicated to travel tips and information without the usual influencer guff getting in the way. This episode, we're talking about Iceland. We visited in January 2024 for 5 days, and in this video we'll break down everything we saw, everything we ate, what we do differently next time, and a full cost breakdown of the whole trip. So day one, after flying early, we made the most of the clear weather to explore Reykjavik. Obviously, one of the big considerations if you're visiting Iceland in the winter is the shorter daylight hours. When we were there in early January, the sun's actually only up for about 4.5 hours each day, so you do have to think about what activities you want to prioritise for the daylight, and make the most of the daylight when you have it, especially when the weather's good. Central Reykjavik isn't particularly big, and we saw a decent amount of it just wandering on foot over about 4 hours. Stopping along the way at some great food spots that I'll talk about later in the video. Day 2, and we got out into the hire car to explore the Reykjanes Peninsula, taking in the volcanic landscape around the bridge between continents, where you can walk between the tectonic plates. This area is about an hour west of Reykjavik, maybe half an hour south of Keflavik Airport. We then moved down to the Gunnavar hot springs, and up to the nearby lighthouse. And then a short walk down the hill to this spectacular lookout, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. We then made our way further east on the peninsula, visiting Krýsuvík geothermal area. Amazing to see, but very, very smelly. And the black sand beaches of the nearby lake. With a little more daylight, maybe we'd have fit more sightseeing into each day, but on the other hand, we wanted to stay relaxed and take it easy on holiday, so we didn't stress too much about any sort of schedule. Day 3, and we're back out in the car, this time going east about an hour and a half outside of Reykjavik into the Golden Circle, arriving first with a beautiful sunrise at Giza. Compared to the Reykjanes Peninsula the day before, the Golden Circle locations have a lot more people and a bit more tourist infrastructure. Not necessarily a bad thing when you get to use the loo after an hour and a half in the car, but I imagine in some months it can probably get pretty busy up here. Thankfully the next stop was only 10 minutes up the road, the mighty waterfall Gullfoss. Thankfully, all of these amazing natural wonders in Iceland are free to visit, other than your transport to get there. So if you steal food from the hotel breakfast buffet each morning for packed lunches, like we definitely did not do, then you can keep your daily sightseeing costs fairly low if you're travelling on a budget. Leaving the waterfall, we took a beautiful 30-minute drive south towards the Secret Lagoon. This geothermal swimming pool, advertised as the oldest in Iceland, is surrounded by natural springs that feed it with the hot water to keep the temperature at 38 to 40 degrees Celsius all year round. Admission is priced at 3,600 Icelandic krona each, which works out at about £21 or €24. Great value, beautiful surroundings, just a great place to relax. We probably would have liked to get a second day in the Golden Circle if possible, but the weather didn't quite work out for us. Maybe next time. Into day 4, we had the worst weather of the trip on this day. We wanted to get out to the Holmsvik hot springs, and we weren't going to let a little bit of storm get in the way of that, so we made the hour drive out from Reykjavik. These hot springs are certainly more expensive than the Secret Lagoon prices, over twice as much at 8,200 krona each. The prices do seem to be variable depending on the day or the time. That's what we paid. It's about £47 sterling or about €55. That being said, we had an absolutely amazing time here. The hot springs are really special. The landscape by the fjord is absolutely stunning, sort of made all the more special by the storm. I'm sure it's amazing in clear weather as well, but there was something very atmospheric about being there in the bad weather, in the hot pools with the rain lashing off the mountains. Just a really great experience, one of the top things we did in Iceland. Unfortunately, the weather only seemed to get worse as the day went on, so once we were done at Springs, we got the journey back to Reykjavik out the way and decided to get into the Perland Museum for a bit of indoor time. Not super cheap, each ticket is 5,400 krona each, which is £31 or 36 euros. That does come with access to everything, the different shows and the observation deck. Is it worth it at that price? Yes, I'd say it probably is. There's a lot to see, it's well presented, it's a good option when it's wet outside, and probably a good option for families as well. Also, if you're unlucky like we were, and the conditions for the Northern Lights just aren't right when you're there, the Borealis light show is probably the closest thing you're going to get to seeing them. Into our final day in Iceland, where we had beautiful weather for our trip back out to the Reykjanes Peninsula, close to Keflavik Airport, for the Blue Lagoon. Compared to the other spas and springs we visited, the Blue Lagoon was definitely a different beast. Much bigger site, much bigger pools, many more people, and much more expensive. Prices do vary depending on days and times. We paid about 13,000 krona each, which works out to £75 or about 87 euros. This did include one free drink at the bar in the lagoon and one mud mask from the mask bar, but this still is considered the basic, cheapest ticket. I think overall we were pleased to have done it, but at that price we certainly wouldn't be rushing back, and maybe if you were travelling on a limited budget or with limited time, it might be worth skipping in favour of a cheaper or quieter spa. We only had a few hours left before we needed to return the rental car, so we stayed in the area nearby the Blue Lagoon and near Keflavik, visiting a few places we spotted by the roadside or on Google Maps, like this American Air Force World War II memorial, these traditional Icelandic fishermen's cottages, and this lookout point with a beautiful orange lighthouse. And that was the end of the trip. We returned our hire car to Ice Rental 4x4. They were really good, we had no issues with them, it was a good price for the car. We sprung for all the extra insurance packages as I'd seen advised, which is definitely worth it, gives you a good bit of peace of mind that if anything does happen, you're not going to be held liable for it. The car does take a bit of a beating in the weather, with grit and ice and all sorts of things flying into it in the wind, so definitely worth it to be insured against that risk so you don't get stung with any fees. Final car cost to consider is obviously just the petrol. We spent £80 over the 5 days of driving. Back into the good stuff, I'll do a quick speed round of places we ate and drank. All the info will be in the comments if you need any more. Starting off with Tommy Burger. There's a bunch of these around Reykjavik. We went to the one down by the harbour. The burger's really good, the fries are really good. It's on the pricey side. All the food in this is going to be on the pricey side. It's probably worth it. Stopped by this place, not going to butcher the name. Had the lamb kebab sandwich. It was nice, we shared it. Expensive for what it is, but a nice place to stop in. Quick sandwich on your way somewhere. Felino's Italian restaurant next. This was near our hotel. Stupidly ordered a whole bottle of fancy Prosecco and only one pizza, which wasn't really enough for dinner, so ended up having to do a second dinner across the road at Plan B Smashburger, who were closing and would only serve us chicken tenders. Should have just got less Prosecco and more pizza, oh well. My Thai Bistro is down closer to the town centre. This place is really nice, it's sort of self-service, you just order up at the bar and they bring it over to you. The lady that owns it is sweet, the food's really good, would definitely recommend it. We then popped over the road to the food court place where there's a lot of bars and an ice cream spot for some gelato. Poblana, Mexican restaurant, again right in the centre of town. We let this one get away from us a bit cost-wise because we'd had a couple of drinks and then didn't really pay attention to how expensive the tequila and the cocktails in the restaurant were. But the food is great and the vibes are good, so no regrets. Would recommend it. Broad or Broad and Co. Not sure how you say it. There's a few of these dotted around. We went to a couple of different ones. Really nice option for breakfasts, or if you just want a little pastry and a coffee. There's one near the cathedral in the middle of town that's a good little spot if you want to get out the weather. Just a nice place. The Wiener Braud pastry is delicious. Really, really recommend it. Some of our favourite little bits of food from there, and fairly inexpensive by Iceland standards. Stumbled across this bar one evening. It's a bookstore by day and a live music spot and sort of cocktail bar, I think, by night. Really great, lovely atmosphere in here. Stayed in here for a bit. Can't actually remember what we had. I think looking at the credit card bill, it was probably a couple of cocktails. But yeah, cool spot, good music, nice vibes, definitely recommend it. Went to Bullseye one of the evenings. This is a big darts bar in town. Very, very fun. This is on the expensive side. The hour on the dartboard isn't cheap. The drinks aren't cheap. The Guinness here is absolutely woeful. My fault for ordering Guinness and not a nice local brew. But it's a well put together spot. Nice place to go for an evening. So I've just run through a couple of other little bits and bobs that we picked up along the way in Iceland. And then I get into the breakdown of the full cost of the whole trip. As we've just gone over, food isn't always particularly cheap in Iceland. One way we got around this was by having a hotel that had breakfast included. Just meant you could get a good start on the day with a big meal and take some bits away for packed lunch. Our hotel did have signs expressly forbidding this, but as long as you don't really take the mickey, I suspect you'll probably be fine. On another note, because we were going in January and we wanted to be able to bring lots of warm weather gear and coats and boots and stuff, we flew with BA rather than flying budget, so we had a full luggage allowance. This actually allowed us to bring some cereal bars and little snacks and bits from the UK with us that we could keep in the car, as well as some gin and tonic for drinks in the evening while we were getting ready to go out. Just something to consider if you do have the baggage space for this. Okay, full cost breakdown time. Every single penny that we spent in Iceland is listed here, even including the fridge magnet at the airport, so that you can get a proper idea of what this might cost if you wanted to do a similar trip. So looking at the big ticket items, thinking about some places could have saved some money, obviously could have flown budget to save a bit on the flights, certainly could have got a cheaper hotel. We needed one with a gym because I was training for a marathon at the time, so if that hadn't been the case, we could have gone for something a little on the cheaper side. To be honest, on the whole, I don't think that was a bad cost for the holiday we had. We had a really, really good time. And I think when you look at the average figures broken down per night, that's not really far off what you'd expect to spend having a good time on a long weekend anywhere else in Europe, really. Just as a quick note, we never actually used cash in Iceland, never took out any krona, never had any krona on us. We used cards the whole time and there was no problem with that. Big question at the end of all this, would we return to Iceland? And I think it's easy to say yes, we definitely would. It's a beautiful, beautiful place and there's only more of it to see. I think things we do differently next time would be visit in a warmer month, just with some longer daylight. That being said, I don't regret going in the winter, just having been in January already, it'd be nice to see some variation. Similarly, if we were lucky enough to return, I think we'd push out further away from Reykjavik, as we've seen some of the sites around there, to try and get out to some of the bits that are a bit further afield. Maybe even one day have enough time to take on the ring road around the whole island and have a real adventure. So there it is, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope that's helpful for you if you're preparing a trip to Iceland. I'll put as much information as I can down in the description. Any questions, leave us a comment, I'll get back to everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers.